On a clear morning in August 1942, a US Navy blimp lifted off from the Californian coast. Two crew members were on board, the mission was routine, the weather was calm, no distress call was ever made. Hours later, the blimp was found drifting inland. The engines were running, the radio was intact, the parachutes were still on board, but the crew was completely gone. And to this day, nobody knows what happened to them. It's midnight somewhere, and tonight I have a story for you. The aircraft was L-8, a US Navy patrol blimp, and on August 16, 1942, it departed from Treasure Island Naval Base in San Francisco Bay. Its assignment was very simple: a routine anti-submarine patrol along the Californian coastline. World War II was well underway, but this mission was considered very low risk. The crew consisted of Lieutenant Ernest D. Cody and Ensign Charles E. Adams. Both men were very experienced, both had flown similar missions before, and nothing unusual was reported right before takeoff. So the L-8 headed west towards the Pacific Ocean, and for the first few hours everything appeared to be perfectly normal. The blimp maintained radio contact, its course was very steady, and the weather was also quite clear. And approximately 10 a.m, the crew radioed in one final message, and they reported that there was an oil slick sighted below. This wasn't alarming in any way because oil slicks were quite common along the coast and they were often harmless, so the blimp descended slightly to investigate the slick. That transmission, unfortunately, was the last time that anybody heard from the crew. After the report, contact with the L-8 was lost. There was no distress signal, there was no emergency call, and there was no indication of any sort of trouble. The blimp didn't return to base as it was scheduled, and at first the delay was not considered very urgent at all. But hours passed, and then evening came, and strangely, the blimp didn't return. Now, at approximately 10 a.m. the following day, residents near Daly City, California, noticed something very, very strange. A massive Navy blimp was drifting silently overhead, and it was moving inland. Slowly and aimlessly, with no crew visible, and moments later, the L-8 struck power lines and then crashed into a hillside. Now, the impact only caused minor damage, and when Navy personnel arrived, they made a disturbing discovery. The blimp was largely intact. Inside, the investigators found the radio still functioned, the engines were still operating, and there was still fuel in the fuel tanks, along with the navigational instruments were completely untouched. Now, most unsettling of all, both the crew parachutes were still on board. And the emergency hatch was wide open, but there were no signs of struggle, there was no blood, there was no damage inside the blimp suggesting a violent event. The men had simply vanished. Now, investigators considered several different possibilities as to what happened to the crew members. An accidental fall was considered, but it became unlikely because both men would have had to fall independently. Could it have been enemy action? There was no signs of any sort of sabotage, no signs of gunfire, and there was also no sign of any damage to the blimp. Could it have been mechanical failure? All checks found that there was no mechanical failure on the airship. The most widely accepted theory was that one crew member may have left the gondola to investigate the oil slick and somehow fallen into the ocean, and then the second man might have attempted a rescue and then also fallen himself. But there's no evidence that this occurred and no explanation for why standard safety procedures were ignored. Now, the US Navy eventually closed the investigation. No official cause was ever listed, no conclusion was ever reached, and the incident was quietly recorded as unexplained. The L-8 was repaired and then it was returned to service and flown again, but the fate of its crew was never ever determined. So, a routine patrol took off over calm waters. The aircraft came back, but the men didn't. There was no distress call ever heard, no explanation was ever confirmed, and what truly happened aboard the ghost blimp has never ever been proven. Let me know down in the comments what you think really happened. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. And if you enjoy dark stories told at midnight, make sure you subscribe because I release new mysteries every single week. And until then, I'll see you at midnight.